I really have always been interested in what sort of computer cultures get formed. And the other things I've always been interested in is what do you have to know as a teacher in any of these computer cultures. I'm not going to talk about it, but that's always in the back of my mind. So I want to reminisce about the logo computer culture. I don't know how many of you know, but I started Logo with Seymour Papert and Wally Feuerzeig. We started, Seymour was a consultant and I was working at Bolt, Beranek and Newman, where Wally was. Now I want to tell you about Logo. Logo started in 1966, where most of you weren't born. And we discussed needing a programming language for kids. Our experience had been working with a language called Telcomp, which was like BASIC, except it was interpretive. And Seymour's great line was, teaching kids algebra through an algebraic language was not very helpful. So he went off to Cyprus, where he went to see his baby daughter, and was there for 6 weeks, and when he came back, he had the specs for a new programming language. And we met with Danny Barbaro, Wally, a guy named Dick Grant. We all sat around and we thought about this new language, which initially Dan called Ghost, because the big thing is kids were going to play with words and sentences. So we thought of it as Baby Lisp because we all in that room had a Lisp background. And we felt Lisp was pretty good except for parentheses and a few other things. For Seymour, Logo was the stepping stone to a math land. The first version of Logo was written in Lisp on an SES 940. Dan started the code and turned it over. We debugged it in 1967 with a group of kids. I think there was a week-long course. And after that, we totally revised Logo. Logo went through many revisions. Dick Grant was involved in writing this new version of Logo on PDP-1, which was time-shared, was one of the early time-sharing systems. So I'm trying to give you a little bit of computing history. And it was ready for us. Seymour and I taught, here's the first Logo class. These are 7th graders, 1968. There were 14 kids and 14 terminals. Some of the terminals were teletypes. There were Model 35s and Model 33s. I'll show you what they look like in a second. So here's Seymour, me, and this lovely young lady. And here is the teletypes. These were Model 35s. And here's what, in case you, this is the mechanism. And a wonderful story about that is this was in a junior high school in Lexington, Massachusetts. And one of the kids who was not in the class we taught was considered illiterate. And he was in that class of things. He took one of the teletype manuals home, read it, and came back ready to help debug anything. I mean, we had stories like this. It's hard to believe, but they're true, and I'm sure a lot of you have had the same sort of experience through a kind of exciting computing experience. Kids come alive that other people thought weren't. In Mindstorms, one of the projects we did with kids was sentence generators. Oh, I know I was going to tell you this. I didn't start out being the teacher. We hired somebody to be a teacher. She was a regular teacher, a math teacher. And I was off doing some other stuff, and when I came back, it was the school year had started, and Wally and Seymour had been visiting the school, and then I went to visit. And I said, no way. Seymour was too hesitant to say anything, and this is an intellectual split between Seymour and Wally. Wally didn't see anything that needed debugging. What was going on was the teacher was teaching kids like what print was, very local little things, and I came along and said, we've got to do projects. We can't teach language. We have to teach using it for a reason. So that began, I took over the teaching and got Seymour to collaborate with me. So he would come out twice a week. This was in lieu of their regular math class, so we had the kids 4 days a week. And we chose these kids because they were average, some a little below and some a little above, but average, that's what their school testing gave them. So one of the projects was sentence generators. Now, for the first time in their lives, kids said to me in this class, I see why they have verbs and nouns, because the first few sentence generators were gobbledygook. The child talking to Seymour is the one who did this particular thing. People keep asking me who it was, because this is a sample that was in Mindstorms. At the end of that year, there were lots of funny stories, but I'm not going to tell them unless you ask. The Spring Joint Computer Conference. See, I'm giving you more history. There used to be 2 computer conferences. One was called the Fall Joint Computer Conference, and that was always on the West Coast, and the Spring Joint Computer Conference, which was always on the East Coast. And in 1969, it was in Boston. So Wally arranged, we rented a hall, we brought teletypes there, we brought kids there to demonstrate to a whole lot of educators. And the way I prepared the kids ahead of time was to say, you've got to be patient. These people will be dumb like you were when you started. And sure enough, at the thing, they would ask a kid a question and the kid could answer it, and then they'd run away. They wouldn't wait for the whole answer. And I've had that experience with teachers since then, too. Anyway, this, I just thought I'd mention that the first public symposium on Logo took place April 11th, 1970.